All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Ms. Riska, can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Here.
Kosky?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanas?
Here.
Mrs. Yarko?
Present.
Council, we need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Kosky.
move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke.
Could we move item I, the resolution in support of federal tax exemption for bonds, to consideration item D?
8D.
7I from the consent
Yes.
agenda will become consideration 8D.
All I have, Mr. Mayor.
Council, anything else? With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Despite the roller coaster temperatures we've seen the last couple of weeks, spring will be here this week. And a sure sign of spring is our yard waste collection program beginning the week of March 31st. So everyone take note. It means you have to get all your lawn equipment tuned up and ready to go and get ready to set things out. So just as a reminder, you can use the old green GFL bin labeled with city yard waste stickers, so you can put that on. If you have any of those old bins left, you can use them, or paper yard waste bags, or you can purchase a brown cart from Priority. So you have a few options. Please take note of that. And again, that starts March 31st. And also I wanted to remind everyone that the Shine Day will be held on May 4th, again at the First Church of Sterling Heights on DeQuinder Road. We're always looking for volunteers. This has been a long-standing program. You've heard me talk about it a lot. This is a group of volunteers that go out and help individuals clean up their properties in the spring and fall. Those who are not able to do it on their own. They may have senior mobility limitations. They may have a medical condition, some sort of financial hardship. And so the volunteer corps goes out and helps rake leaves, mow grass, trim bushes, in some cases paint sheds. It sounds like a heavy lift, but it really isn't. The group meets at 9. They get started around 10, and they put in 2 to 3 hours, and you feel really good about it. We have anywhere from 50 to 100 people that help out with this program, so we encourage you to participate. If you'd like more information, please go to our website. But the Shine Day is Saturday, May 4th, beginning at 9:30 a.m.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs.
I
Schmidt.
believe that Saturday is May 3rd.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
we
sorry.
got an
Well, thank you.
update on that.
Well, thank you
She
for
read
the
old
correction.
one.
Well, thank you.
Saturday, May
That's probably a holdover from last year, so May 3rd. I stand corrected. I talk about this so much, I forget to change the dates. All right, May 3rd, Saturday. Okay, and the most important part of my report this evening is to talk a bit about traffic calming. One of the most frequent complaints the mayor and city council receive from residents, and we get them a lot in city management as well, is speeding in neighborhoods, right? I mean, if you're a resident, you've lived here a while, it's a big problem. It's a problem everywhere. And cities are trying to figure out creative ways, proactive ways to deal with this all across the country. And it's not just neighborhoods, it's other major roads as well. So Sterling Heights, we've been hard at work on this over the last couple of years, and we're fortunate enough that we were able to get a Safe Streets for All grant in the amount of $500,000 to conduct a comprehensive study looking at creative ways we could slow traffic down across the city. And you're going to hear this evening about that plan in great detail, and you're going to hear about many of the measures that are already underway under a pilot program that we plan to begin implementing more permanently in long-term as well. So I want to first recognize the task force that has been working on this endeavor for over the past year. And the first one who's going to be leading a good part of the discussion tonight is Leah Michaels from HRC, also Mike McDonald from HRC, and also our internal team, which includes Lieutenant Aaron Susala, our road superintendent Ken Schwartz, our deputy chief Dave Allen, and also our engineer Scott Sharon, who really has played a major role in this too, and also our city engineer Brent Bayshaw. They're all going to be participating this evening, available for questions, but we're going to kick this off with our city engineer Brent Bayshaw, who's going to lead us through the first part.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, and good evening, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Koszubski. The Comprehensive Transportation Safety Action Plan is an exciting framework for the city to make roadways safer for all users, with the ultimate goal of eliminating all serious and fatal roadway crashes by the year 2050. So you may hear this concept described as Vision Zero, and it's a vision that the city of Sterling Heights is adopting with this safety action plan. So the plan is driven by data, and it's collaborative, is for all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, transit, and all motorists, including cars and trucks. So the safety plan is a dynamic plan. It's adaptable. It integrates leadership, goal setting, safety and equity analysis, public engagement, and ongoing evaluation. It truly is a plan for all. To aid in this creation of this plan, the city created a citywide traffic calming task force that meets regularly and will continue to do so to implement the plan. The task force is shown here, and some of the members are here today, as Mr. Vanderpool just introduced. But the task force includes representatives from city management, Office of Engineering, the Police Department, Fire Department, Department of Public Works, City Development and Planning Office, Community Relations, the Information Technology and GIS Department, and Purchasing. And personally, I'd like to thank all those on the slide for their effort to date as well, and for their passion for executing this vision. As you will see, this vision takes input and effort from all angles to achieve its goal. So the Traffic Safety Action Plan has been completed by consultant Hobelroth and Clark, with input from the task force and the community through vast public involvement process. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Leah Michaels from Hobelroth and Clark to provide a summary of the city's Traffic Safety Action Plan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm first going to go through what the Safety Action Plan entails. And the overall principles for this plan are the safe system approach. And the safe system approach is our way of looking at crashes, knowing that death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable, but the responsibility is shared. Safety is something we need to be proactive about, and redundancy is crucial in eliminating these fatalities and serious injuries. The 5 elements that we focused on are safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care. So this comprehensive layered system of protections helps us to prioritize safety for all road users. If one element fails, other layers continue to safeguard, and fatalities and serious injuries only occur when multiple layers will break down. As Brent mentioned, we went through an engagement process as part of this plan, where we first developed a website that had an opportunity for the public to provide input on 2 different surveys. One being safety focused for the entire city, where we received over 560 comments. Another one was about visioning Ryan Road to understand what the community would like to see for the future of Ryan Road. We also had a mapping tool where we received 330 responses that were specific to locations throughout the city. We also participated in one of the Thursdays in the park, right here. We also attended 3 different committees: the Ethnic Community Committee, the Youth Advisory Board, and the African American Coalition, as a way to get out the information about the safety website and really engage with those specific groups. And then we did also translate our flyer into Arabic for those in the community. That was easier to understand. So why are we here? Our main focus is fatalities and serious injuries. And just to give an overall safety context for the city of Sterling Heights, we've looked at the past 5 years of crash data. For the city, on average, there are 4,200 crashes per year just within the city of Sterling Heights. In addition, there's over 6 fatalities per year and 34 serious injuries. So our focus here is really to eliminate those fatalities and those serious injuries on city roadways and within the city. So as Brent mentioned, the goal here is to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries by the year 2050. We know it will not happen overnight, but by implementing different measures, as Brent will talk about, some of the upcoming projects that will be occurring, as well as some of the current projects that are happening, we can help the city achieve that goal. And one of the things will be to continue to measure progress, to continue to see how the city is doing over the years. We looked at various emphasis areas throughout the city, honing in on specific crashes related to those emphasis areas. The majority of fatalities and serious injuries do happen at intersections, so that was an area of focus. We also looked at high-risk behaviors, specifically speed management, distracted driving, and impaired driving. We also had a focus on at-risk road users, so not just the vehicles, but the pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as seniors and young drivers and other high-risk users. The study also looked at evolving emphasis area, which includes connected and autonomous vehicles. So throughout the study, we looked at different ways to prioritize the segments and intersections throughout the city. There's various maps that were reviewed. The one specifically on the screen shows segment crashes per year. To no one's surprise, the majority of the crashes occur on the roads that have the highest volumes. But some other city roads really stood out, specifically Ryan Road towards the southern section of the city, as well as Hayes Road and some others. With input from the task force, we identified some specific high-risk intersections and segments to dive deeper into. You'll notice on this list, it does not include roads owned by the county or MDOT. This was focused on city-owned roads, as the city has easier say over those roads, easier way of implementing improvements. So the study really focused on some high crash intersections and segments that the city can control and start implementing measures on. We also looked at some system-wide enhancements, specifically related to pedestrian and bicycle safety, as well as traffic calming on neighborhood roads. So overall, the study is really meant to create a safer transportation system, and it's really a collective effort that involves everyone. It involves all the people at the city, as well as the residents, and there's various ways that people can help improve safety through your work, through schools, through organizations, law enforcement. So overall, we can't achieve this without everybody's help. So if we dig deeper into the Ryan Road corridor, that was one of the specific areas that we did look at. So Ryan Road is a high crash corridor within the city. So the study included the entire length of Ryan Road from 14 Mile up to Dobry Drive. One thing to note, our traffic volumes on the south end are a lot higher than those on the north end. So there's about a 24% decrease in traffic from down by 14 Mile up to Dobry on the north. The goal of this study was really to improve safety for all users, to accommodate non-motorized traffic, and to look at really right-sizing the corridor for existing users. So the first thing we looked at for Ryan Road was really digging deeper into the safety. Again, looking at the past 5 years of traffic data. Just on Ryan Road alone, there's over 200 crashes per year. On average, 0.8 fatalities, many years having 1 fatality, and serious injuries, about 2.5 per year if we average over the last 5 years. The Ryan Road public involvement, as I mentioned, we did have a specific survey asking the community about their specific vision for Ryan Road. A couple of the top concerns that really showed up were high speeds, distracted driving, congestion and delay, difficulty crossing, difficulty turning into driveways, and the lack of sidewalk and pathways. We did get 133 responses, and about 17% of those people surveyed said that they do walk on Ryan Road, and 8% of people said that they bike on Ryan Road. Even though 97% of our respondents primarily drive alone, there's also a need for people to walk and bike along this corridor. So with input from the Traffic Calming Task Force, we developed 2 different concepts that vary along the corridor. So as I mentioned, the traffic volumes on the southern end are much higher than those on the northern end. So if we talk specifically from 14-mile to 18-mile road, the task force proposes to install a boulevard with 2 lanes in each direction, a median in the center with landscaping, 2 10-foot paths on both sides of the road to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. Overall, the median will accommodate the safety concerns along Ryan Road, which a lot of them have to do with left-turning vehicles into driveways, at side streets, at the major intersections. And then with the median and the pathways will help to enhance non-motorized safety as well as add some crossings along the corridor. From 18-mile up to Jobury, it was found that a different cross-section could be considered. The task force recommended a 3-lane roadway, again, maintaining that 10-foot paths on each side of the road, but bringing down the travel lanes to 1 lane in each direction with a center left turn lane. In those areas where left turning is not needed, we're proposing to add a median to give an opportunity for some landscaping as well as some enhanced crossing locations. And by reducing the footprint of the roadway, it provides a lot of green space outside of the road, between the road and the safety path, that the city could consider installing some linear parks or other non-motorized facilities along the corridor. The last part of the study focused on traffic calming, specifically for neighborhood roads. So what is traffic calming? Mr. Vanderpool spoke about speeding being a very big concern in the neighborhoods. So what we look at with traffic calming are ways to reduce vehicle speeds, also ways to manage traffic volumes, to eliminate cut-through traffic on our neighborhood roads, to reduce crashes and improve non-motorized safety, as well as look for ways to use enforcement and education to help achieve lower speeds on the roads. So the traffic calming program has a variety of different strategies, from engagement to enforcement, as well as some engineering items that force people to drive around different things that are put in the road or drive over, such as the speed cushions. So there's a number of strategies that the city can pick from to help address traffic calming in the neighborhoods. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Acting Deputy Chief Allen, who's going to talk a little bit more about the traffic calming program.
Mayor, council, and city administration, happy Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, happy St. Patrick's Day. I'd like to thank you for the.
Started early tonight?
I did. It was a very early morning, yeah. For the opportunity to participate in the Traffic Calming Task Force. The police department prides itself on keeping the community safe, and this is paramount to those efforts. Traffic complaints are the #1 concern of our residents, which falls directly in line with the city's Vision Zero initiatives. I'd first like to discuss how the police department currently fields complaints, and then discuss why the implementation of the Traffic Calming Task Force and Traffic Calming Dashboard will streamline our efforts and give real-time data feedback to our residents and the group. The police department currently fields complaints via several different avenues. Majority of our complaints are taken through the online portal See Click Fix. And in addition, we receive traffic complaint forms found on the city website, calls directly to the department, and complaints called into dispatch. We are very thorough in responding to these complaints. However, our current method does not paint an accurate, comprehensive view. The data comes from several different sources and would be incredibly difficult to compile into one place. The new program will streamline this process and allow us to really focus on the trouble areas, which in turn will bring lasting solutions. The new streamlined program will involve a 7-step process you can see on this slide here. Residents will submit the request via the link on the city website. There, they will fill in a form with the required information. This will be looked at by our traffic division as to the severity of the complaint and if it meets the criteria for a possible traffic calming evaluation. This complaint will then be brought in front of the task force for a collaborative review. A scoring criteria will be conducted, and we will indicate the necessity for the immediate action or future review. A strategy will be developed to address the complaint. The strategy will then be implemented, and then finally, follow-up will be conducted to assess the effectiveness of the resolution and provide feedback as to whether or not adjustments need to be made. The public will then have the opportunity to view their complaints on a forward-facing dashboard as shown on this slide. This dashboard will give real-time data on the status of the complaint, what actions are taking place, and if the complaint is open, pending, or closed. In addition, the dashboard gives a comprehensive and robust look at what types of complaints we have received, such as speeding, parking, bicycle and pedestrian safety, excess traffic, and so on. This will help the task force focus their efforts on the right place with the right solutions. I believe that this collaborative approach amongst engineering, the police department, DPW, and code enforcement, and other city officials will be the most effective and efficient way to approach these concerns. I'd like to turn the podium back over now to Brent to discuss traffic calming measures that have already been implemented and to also discuss what the future holds for our continued success and safety towards the Vision Zero initiative. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to help create and participate with this task force. I look forward to seeing its successful outcomes.
All right, thank you, Deputy Chief Allen. In 2024, a number of the pilot programs were initiated that implemented some of these strategies found in the plan's framework. I'd like to go through some of these efforts at this time and then go through some projects on the docket for 2025 and in the future. Speed cushions were installed on Brome Drive. Brome was selected based on resident input. When the traffic data was collected, it showed that 85% of the vehicles traveled at 36 miles per hour on this 25-mile-an-hour road. The resident feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with one resident asking for an additional speed hump to be installed within the first week of the original installation, and another resident immediately called and asked for installation of speed cushions on their street, which is adjacent to Brome. The speed cushions themselves were selected by the task force as they are emergency vehicle friendly, with the gapping and the low profile. In fact, the speed cushion's height is lower than the curb to get into your driveway. In late 2024, 3 medians were installed on Pondview Drive. And Pondview Drive is a 35 or 25 mile an hour neighborhood road where 85% of the vehicles were also traveling at 36 miles an hour. So the islands were identified as an improvement to provide traffic calming as well as aesthetics, but the islands provide a few of the traffic calming tools that are in our plan. So namely the narrowing of the lanes, the increase of tree canopy, and they can also be used to provide a safe pedestrian crossing like the northerly island on Pondview that's shown on the picture on the bottom left. Pavement markings were installed on Viceroy early in 2024, another road that receives much resident feedback on speeding. These measures remind drivers of neighborhood that are entering this neighborhood setting that they're driving into a neighborhood from both 14 Mile Road and 15 Mile Road. Tree canopies are proven to be a traffic calming measure as well. The tree canopied streets, like Maureen Drive shown here, can be achieved over time, and many street trees were planted in 2024, including the west end of Brome Drive and the south end of Pondview Drive, that will create this canopy over time. In the spring of 2024, Plumbrook Road was striped for bike lanes. The bike lanes provide a safe space for cyclists, but what you may not have noticed is that the vehicular drive lanes were painted with a reduced width. This is also a measure of traffic calming. The results were positive. Pre and post speed data were taken, showed a reduction in the average speed of vehicles on Plumbrook Road by 2 miles an hour, but more significant was a drastic reduction in vehicles traveling at excessive speeds. In collaboration with Utica Community Schools, pedestrian safety improvements were made to Stevenson High School that included new pavement striping, curb bump outs that were accomplished through delineators, push button pedestrian activated crossings called RRFBs, and lighting improvements that are on the RFFBs as well. Utica Community Schools Superintendent Bob Monroe was recently quoted saying, "These changes at Stevenson High School greatly increase the safety of our students as they begin and end their day at school." To provide a complete approach to this project, the task force decided to make a user video that would be a big part of the solution. And thanks to PD and Community Relations for making a great video that was shared with the Stevenson students at the beginning of the year. We've made numerous roadway improvements to improve pedestrian safety on major roads in 2024. And this includes the push button signals on Utica Road near the city center, and similar improvements to mid-block crossings on Clinton River Road, 19 Mile Road, and Canal Road west of Shaner were all completed in 2024 as well. So what's upcoming in the near future for improvements for traffic safety in the city? The task force and safety plan identified many projects that can be incorporated in a short time. We have some of these great projects in motion for 2025, incorporating them into the elements of our traffic safety plan. I have a technical error here, hang on. Okay, there we go. So in collaboration with the county, 14 traffic signals will be improved and modernized in the city beginning in 2025. They'll improve the vehicular and pedestrian safety, and they include new pedestrian crossings that have push button activated ped heads that will improve all the pedestrian crossings at these intersections. Speed cushions will be installed on Fox Hill between DeQuinder and Ryan, and on Hillsdale between Shaner Road and Saul Road. These are two streets that were identified with high 85th percentile speeds. Curb extensions will be made on Stadler Drive near Washington Square Park. 3 medians will be installed in the center turn lane of 17 Mile Road resurfacing, or 17 Mile Road between Mount and Van Dyke with the resurfacing project. These medians will be installed in the dead space in the center turn lane. A multi-year program to plant 15,000 trees to increase tree canopy on streets will begin in 2025. In cooperation with Utica Community Schools, once again, the mid-block crossing at Shaner Road at Havel Elementary School will be improved with RRFBs, new pavement striping, and advanced warning vehicular signs. Median islands will be installed on Ketson Road as part of the local road reconstruction program. Speed limit pavement markings will be installed on Moss Drive and Pondview Drive. And bridge improvements at Hayes Road and 18 Mile Road will include a separating barrier between the vehicular lanes and the sidewalk to improve pedestrian safety. Lastly, signal improvements will be made at the intersection of 19 and Shaner to improve the preemptive vehicle technology. The emergency vehicles at Fire Station 2 are equipped with devices to communicate with signals to adjust the signal operation in live time during runs. So this is a very innovative and great technology that will be great to expand into the future of the city. Also in 2025, the city will be applying for funding to address areas identified by the task force and the transportation safety plan. The Safe Streets for All program funded our study, but the Safe Streets for All program also has construction monies available to implement identified projects. So the first opportunity is called the SS4A demonstration grant. So the city is looking for a $2 million project to install speed cushions, curb extensions, mini traffic circles, and mostly we anticipate a large program to improve pedestrian safety with new up-to-standard crosswalk paintings with a citywide program. The second federal grant opportunity is called the implementation grant. And large dollar amounts are available within this program to implement projects identified within your safety action plan. So the city will be looking to fund Ryan Road with this grant and make application in 2025. So Ryan Road is proposed to be completed in 3 segments, working south to north. Phase 1 would be applied for to improve Ryan Road from 14 Mile Road to Metro Parkway. And this was found to be the most dangerous portion of Ryan Road within the study. It's anticipated that Phase 2, which is from Metro Parkway to 18 Mile Road, and Phase 3, which is from 18 Mile Road to M59, can be funded with future programs such as a RAISE grant or a future round of SS4A implementation grants. So each phase can stand on its own as a separate project, however. Another funding opportunity is through the Highway Safety Improvement Program Safety Grant. For this program, a project to improve the pedestrian safety of Saul Road is proposed. So Saul Road is a barrier between 2 residential areas. They have parks and schools on either side. It's a heavily traversed corridor by pedestrians. And with the sidewalk gaps recently completed, the timing would be great to improve the roadway crossing safety. Additionally, UCS has contacted us about improving the school crossing at Grabner, and we think this is a great program to align with the Utica Community Schools goals and include within this grant application. Lastly, another Highway Safety Improvement Program Safety Grant application is proposed to improve the intersection of Utica Road and 19.5 Mile Road and Triangle Drive. So along with this application would be improving the Canal Road pedestrian crossing as well via the mid-block crossing and sidewalk gap installation. So both of these projects were from residents' feedback, and then the task force also had concerns about these areas, so it was pretty obvious that an improvement is needed in these 2 areas. In conclusion, the city's first comprehensive transportation safety action plan is the framework to provide Vision Zero. By working together, we can create a transportation network that protects everyone and creates safer streets for the city of Sterling Heights. So thank you for your time. We have representatives here, as Mark introduced, from the entire task force and HRC, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
And Mayor, just a concluding comment. You can see how comprehensive this has been, and you can see how much opportunity there is to make our roadways safe for pedestrians, vehicles, and others in the city. And these grants are really important. We've been super successful with these road grants. When you look over, just the past 10 years alone, when you think about Van Dyke and M59 and Mound Road, and all the other major roads across the city that have been improved. It's been well over $500 million in various roadway projects in Sterling Heights. And so we're incorporating a lot of these ideas into our current road design. For example, we have a major $10 million road project coming on Clinton River Road, which will be a complete new road system between Hayes and Van Dyke. That will incorporate many of these amenities as well. So we're not waiting. But the item on your agenda tonight that really is critical that will allow us to qualify for at least applying for these grants is item H. So we're looking forward to that approval. And I'll just conclude by saying we are continuing to seek, as Ms. Michaels said early on, community feedback on this. We have a robust website, as you saw. We're going to continue to engage with stakeholders, especially as it relates to Ryan Road. We have a long way to go on Ryan Road. There's no final designs yet, but as we inch closer and closer to that project, we'll be reaching out to residents and businesses for even more feedback. So, Mayor and Council, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. Before we move on, since everybody's here, does anybody on council have any questions, comments they'd like to make about Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So I do have a couple of questions, and I have some, not concerns, but maybe ideas, but thoughts. So the first question I have, because I grew up in the country, I've said this before, and I would ride on the country roads with my bike, and there was no sidewalks, there wasn't even pavement most of the time. But in the city, I would never let my kids ride their bikes anywhere near a major road because I was terrified for them. Is there a plan in this for pedestrian bridges? Through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw.
There's a framework. I guess this plan is more so a framework to get to the Vision Zero. So are we looking at pedestrian bridges? Absolutely. We're looking at places where we can make pedestrians safer. I mean, if you look at the study, and there's a lot of details in the study, a large portion of these accidents do involve pedestrians. That's a large portion of making the city safer, is making the city safer for pedestrians. So yes, we are looking at any type of pedestrian improvement we can to make the roadway safer.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. I figured it did, I just wanted to make sure that the residents also heard that. Also, a concern about, one of the things you talked about, Leah Michaels talked about, was the vehicles needed to be safer, as it's been stated and proven so far. These are new battery-operated vehicles, while better for the environment than a gas engine in some respects. They're double the weight of regular, normal internal combustion engine vehicles. So that means that the force of any accident is going to be greater at the same speeds, even if we have a modified speed. So are we looking at modified materials to take care of impact with types of vehicles that are so much heavier? Through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw.
I mean, when we get to that point of view, the plan to make the roads safer, it is multifaceted. Like Ms. Michaels said, it goes to post-accident care all the way to emergent technologies, and emerging technologies are those type of vehicles, and that is a big part of making the roadways safer. Now, how it gets there and how we can control it, it may be through what we, I guess, what we as a city support, and maybe that's due to legislation, what we support. But emergency vehicles is part of the plan. And as cars become heavier, but they also become safer in that what they can do, the sensors they have on them, and just the new technology with the cars in that sense.
Right, and I appreciate that, yeah, thank you again. I'm just worried that we're gonna, you can see there's been things out, studies out, as far as if an electric vehicle with a battery, full-size battery, just hits a median, it hits the metal guardrail, it can crumple that guardrail, and it doesn't have as much impact of stopping, crossover into a different lane. It doesn't impact prevention of hitting other cars as well as it would with a different type of, a lighter weight vehicle. So that's my concern. So just the thoughts on that. Also, if we're talking about, so to go into Ryan Road, single lanes, and the 10-foot walkway, we're already dealing with a congestion issue, so I don't know if that's the best idea, but I'm sure that there will be modifications. And so that's my 2 cents on that. I want to ask, while I've got you, because this actually hit me yesterday, driving on Plumbrook Road and seeing that there was a lot of damage to our Plumbrook lane markers, from the plows. Like the paint is being chipped away. If it's a decal type strip, that's been lifted up. The lane indicators, the intersection indicators that are green at intersections of neighborhood roads and Plumbrook, some of those have actually lifted completely off. You can see it looks like a piece of carpet's been lifted up. So my concern is, how are we going to keep those from happening all the time? Do we have, this is not specific to this issue, but, well, I gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the pilot program too, is how are we going to maintain these? You know, some delineators we left in over the winter, some we took out. We bought the type of delineators where you can take them out and reinstall them. So I think that's part of the pilot program is we're reviewing, you know, once we put these delineators in and the speed humps as well and any other improvements, how do we best maintain them? And I think we're getting our answers as our move along, but this was the first winter that we had to maintain them.
Right, okay, thank you. And just as a little plug, I did notice that once the delineators got put back in and I was driving on Plumbrook, my speed automatically would slow because I feel like, I got to slow down because this lane is much narrower. So even if it wasn't narrower because the bike lane was still there, but once the delineators went up, it just gives the impression that that lane is even narrower. So it does work, and I'm very happy that we're using that. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Anyone else? Mrs. Koski.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Basha. I lived at 14 and a half in Ryan for about 33 years. My granddaughter went to Grissom Middle School, which is about 15 and a half mile in Ryan on the west side. I'm concerned that we need to make sure that we make walkable areas for the children, because a lot of the children would either miss the school bus or forget their lunch. They have to come running home to get their lunch and try to cross Ryan Road. Make sure that the sidewalks are large enough that they can cross 15-mile roads safely. And basically the walkable portion of Ryan Road. The half miles had streetlights or traffic lights. Will those still remain? Will they be controlled on and off like they have been in the last few years? Or is that something that will be reinstituted?
Well, first of all, along with your granddaughter, I am also a Grissom graduate, I should say, so go Raiders. But, yes, the traffic lights actually are being improved this year with those, I think you're talking about the half-mile
Yes.
lights on Ryan Road. They're being improved this year with as part of the plan to improve and modernize 14 signals. So all of those half-mile roads, I'll say, like Dixon and Fox Hill and Franklin Park, those are all being improved and modernized. They'll be improved for pedestrian safety. They'll have the new countdown heads that you may have seen. You know, it's a push button activated by pedestrian. The pedestrian head will actually count down so you understand, you know, where you're at with the timing. And they're identified in our plan, and they're the latest and greatest version of pedestrian crossings.
Will those pedestrian push buttons also apply to 15-mile road to cross on Viceroy to Nelson Park?
That intersection is part of the plan as well, yes.
Will this information be available to the residents over there so that if they have any input, if they have anything that we have missed, that they'll be able to tell us about it, some of the issues that they're running into? How can they correspond with us? What are your means of communicating with them?
Well, we don't have a plan right now, but we can certainly look to solicit more information from them. We did solicit information citywide. We got a lot of feedback on a lot of different intersections. I can't recall if we got any feedback on that specific intersection. But I know the pedestrian crossing is a key component there with the park on the north side of the street, the subdivision on the south side of the street. It's a great intersection to improve, especially for pedestrian crossings. That's going to happen.
Well, the main thing is, as we move forward, now we have this report. I would like to make sure that that report gets, or is available for the residents along Ryan Road there, so that they can go through, they can read it, and they can say, oh, gee, I prefer this method as to that method, because I think there's a couple things in there where they say, this is what can be done for the calming, and maybe let them say, this I like, this I don't like. How are we going to do that? Are you going to send out literature in the water bills? Are you going to send?
Well, we are going to advertise our new website. So we have a website that Lieutenant Allen talked about, that's active. You can go in anytime, put in your concerns. And then we'll have a task force that we created that also is going to meet monthly. We're going to look to implement any of these requests that go into our portal, in the program that Lieutenant Allen spoke of. So there'll be multiple means. I mean, the big part of this plan is community feedback. The community in the neighborhood, they're the ones in the neighborhood, they see the problem, they're the eyes of everything. So a huge part of this program is the community feedback, and that is why we opened up this portal and we're soliciting information.
Well, that was my main concern, is where they can read the information of the study and then make their comments.
Yeah, that'll be posted on our website. We'll have a dedicated page for it.
It'll be on the website through the city channel, the city website,
Correct, yes.
and it's entitled Vision Zero.
Neighborhood Traffic Safety, Comprehensive Transportation Safety Action Plan, I think is the whole name. But
They'll find it.
yes,
That's
Vision
what you're
Zero is a
saying.
good name too. That's easy.
It might be easier.
That's easy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Koski. Mr. Yanis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw. Are we going to continue to, in these areas where we put the traffic calming devices, are we going to continue to monitor speeds, and what are we going to do if we note that speeds are starting to creep up? Like people get used to them and.
Yeah, you might, to answer your question, yes, we have pre-speed data before we put the improvements in, and on our current program, we have the pre-speed data as well. And if we implement any neighborhood traffic calming devices, we'll take pre-speed data and post, and we'll compare them. And if we find it's not an effective tool, we'll have to look at different measures or alternate measures to get the results that we're looking for.
And how long do you plan on monitoring speeds on those roads? Is it like a multi-year, 5 years?
That's probably something we'll have to talk about with the task force, see what a reasonable time is.
Okay.
For instance, we put the speed humps in and the traffic islands in the fall. We really didn't want to take post-speed data over the winter because we know cars are slowing down over the winter anyway, just because of the conditions. So
Okay.
we are scheduled to take our post-speed data shortly on those streets.
Very good. Thank you. And I'm going to offer this one through the chair to the city manager. I noticed that in our transportation safety action plan, there is a chapter on equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. And I'm very concerned in today's Washington, D.C. environment, are we going to have a problem getting federal grants?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilman Yanis. It's a very good question. It doesn't, we have talked about this. It does not pertain to DE&I in the sense that you're thinking. I mean, this is just making sure that our roads are accessible for all individuals, ADA compliant, safe for children, for elderly, those who are visually impaired, and so on and so forth. So it's mainly in that respect more than what you're hearing in terms of national seen. You know, maybe we have to retitle that perhaps, but we don't think that's going to be a problem with respect to grant funding. What you're hearing in the executive orders and so on pertains to any DE&I programs that may conflict with federal discrimination laws, anti-discrimination laws, or creating discriminatory practices. That's certainly not the case with this effort.
Okay, very good. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Just a brief question. So just to clarify to the residents that all of the funding for these projects and improvements are outside the Safe Street millage. So none of that money will be used for these improvements. Is that correct? Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First of all, I have to agree, the residents on Brome want more cushions. I get notifications from residents on Brome all the time saying, can they put more, please? So, obviously, it's doing something, right? I'm just wondering how DPW maneuvered those cushions. And since we have Ken here from DPW, can you comment on that? I'm sorry, through the chair.
So on Brome, we just installed the cushions, so this was our first winter with the cushions. So we ran them over like a dry run before it snowed, and we figured that we could not go with the front plow down or the undercarriage down. So when we would put the carriage down, and when we got to the speed cushions, we would lift the carriage, make sure we salted. When we got to the other side, we put the blade back down. And we made it through the whole winter without any problems, so.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So, I think if we could try that on a few more streets that we're having issues with, that might be a good idea. As far as Ryan, I'm also concerned about 15 Mile from Mound to Viceroy. With all, there's curves there, there's a lot of driveways, there's a left turn lane, there's a lot of accidents there on 15 Mile, I think. So I would like to see maybe something done in that, on 15 Mile as well as Ryan in that area. I kind of hold my breath when I drive down 15 Mile in that area. So that's just my 2 cents about Ryan, but 15 Mile needs to be addressed as well. The safety islands that we've put in, and the one specific one that there's actually two. There's one on 15 Mile just east of Ryan, and there's one on 15 Mile just east of Van Dyke. And I very rarely see people in those safety islands. I see them still crossing in front of McDonald's. And I'm just wondering how we can get people to be educated to use them, or, if anybody has any idea on promoting those more, I don't know. I'm at a loss, but I don't ever see anybody utilizing them. I see them still crossing the street where they're not supposed to. So if the group can come up with some sort of an educational thing that we can put, or signs, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but you guys have a lot of people on that committee, and hopefully you can come up with something else. And also, through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw, can you tell me, as far as the tree plantings in the neighborhoods for the traffic calming, can you tell me what neighborhoods are we targeting for this summer? Do we know yet?
I do not have that information. I'm sorry, I don't know if anyone from the task force here does, but if not, we can get back to you on it.
Okay. I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the committee for this great work. I mean, this is a great starting point that we can really work off of. I had some of my questions already answered, but I guess I had a few more questions. First, in reading the safety study and living literally at 15 Mile and Maple Lane, one of the intersections that I think is one of the most dangerous in the city is 15 Mile and Dodge Park. And specifically the southbound at 15 Mile, because you have a split where you have a left turn lane that gets a lot of traffic. You have a regular lane that dead ends into a parking lot that's straight on, and you have a right turn lane. It seems to me that almost no one goes straight on into the shopping center, and that straight on lane should be eliminated, which would make the intersection smaller. Just have a left turn and a right turn. And that would, I think, both decrease the distance in crossing the intersection and then also just make it a little bit safer. Because I can't tell you how many times, my dad lives at 15 Mile in Van Dyke, I live at 15 Mile Maple Lane, I've turned right there, and I've watched cars not realize that center lane only goes straight into the shopping center, and they'll make either an illegal left or an illegal right. It happens all the time, and I think that that's one of the most dangerous, and it doesn't make sense. It's not intuitive at all. So I think that that is something that we should really address. And if you read the backup on the appendix reports, several residents point this same exact thing out perpetually. Also, cars, this is a major crossing point, 15 Mile and Dodge Park is a major crossing point for kids walking home from school, from Sterling Heights High School. And cars regularly exceed the stop bar and enter the intersection to make illegal right-hand turns, because they're banned, but they still do it. And anything we can do to make this intersection both closer for residents crossing and safer for kids, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen a kid almost get taken out by someone who is obviously just rolling through. It's a big frustration of mine, just that 15 Mile and Dodge Park intersection. I also share some of the concerns about the islands on 15. I mean, people do use them. I drive 15 all the time, so I see people using them. I also saw a guy just yesterday cross in front of the McDonald's and not use it. And I think it has something to do with the bus stops and how they're located right there. So maybe, because we're doing a plan with SMART about relocating bus stops and making them more efficient, maybe we could have them put the bus stops where the island is. Because it seems to me that sometimes they're running across the bus stop to catch the opposite bus or whatever. And that would maybe decrease some of those like cut-throughs right there. But people do use the safety islands. We've had 2 people be struck using the safety islands by drivers operating illegally and not paying attention. And it just goes to show you that even if we put a safety improvement in and a pedestrian uses said safety improvement, if drivers are essentially not paying attention and driving excessively at speeds, people will continue to get hurt. And it's a shame, because both people use the intersection the way it was designed to protect them, because we've had several deaths right there, that's why we have them, and they're still being hurt. I guess on the new signalized crossing, through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw, are we gonna put in the new mast arm signals that we've been putting in all across the city? Or are they just improved pedestrian lights? And then if we redo Ryan, we'll do mast arms, or the black mast arms that are much better, I think, than the swinging lights. Where are we with that, with these new crossings, or not just crossings, but the new signals we're putting in?
Yeah, they're not mast arms, they're on strain poles. So right now they're diagonal span, they're called, there's one diagonal span cutting kitty corner across the intersection, and then the signals are hung on that. These will be box span signals, so you'll have a wire span with a box around on new strain poles. And then what that does is you can put the signals back further behind the intersection, so they're more visible for cars approaching the intersection.
If we can, I'd love new mast arms if we can get the funding for it, but obviously it's a cost issue, I would assume, because they're expensive.
They are very expensive, yeah, but, that's something that we can look at when, we apply for this Ryan Road grant. Usually that can help cut down the cost as if it's a federal aid project, and usually they do support the installation of mast arms.
Because they look better.
Yeah.
And then, traveling through the city, frequently, I see pedestrian crossing areas that span a built-in right turn into like a neighborhood or into a plaza. We have one on the park, on Dodge Park. If you go down, the gentleman who died, I don't think what his name was, just north of 16 Mile, right by what was Heritage High School, the park there. And one of the lanes it spans is a right turn lane made just for the park. And I'm wondering if we might use some bulb outs and some other things, because it doesn't make sense to have both a pedestrian crossing area be the furthest pavement you can get between 2 points.
Yeah, I see.
And so I assume it was not designed that way originally, but the idea that you put the right turn lane right where the pedestrians are crossing seems to be just a built-in impact point for people not paying attention. So we could look at some of those. There's also one at just north of 15 Mile in Dodge Park, right before Brome. Right before Brome, where it also crosses this weird built-in right turn to get into the subdivision right there.
Yeah.
So maybe we should eliminate those or figure out, because I'll be frank, I never see anyone using that built-in right turn.
Yeah.
So maybe it's excessive and we can eliminate it. It also eliminates pavement that's expensive to build.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this in the past, but some of the new pedestrian medians and medians we're putting in, these are gonna be landscaped, correct? We're gonna make them a little bit nicer. The two safety islands on 15 are just concrete, but I'd love to see planters or some kind of, greenery to improve the islands.
Yeah, that's something that we can do. You know, both of those islands were essentially our first pedestrian salvage islands, and, you know, we looked at the functionality, not the aesthetics maybe as much as we could have, but that's something that we can look at as well.
We saw that when we were in Oak Park, and they have, they all have flowers or some kind of greenery to kind of add an aesthetic aspect to what is a crossing point.
Yeah.
And I guess, I'm curious, I see improvements here. Is there any movement to reduce speeds? Not just reduce the speed that cars are traveling, but reduce the speed limit on any of these streets? Because I see in the background, 55 miles an hour on Shaner, when we have a school crossing zone there, which it reduces during the day, but does anyone really slow down? I don't think they do. And then Hayes, there's also several other streets that have, I'm curious about Ryan Road. If we improve Ryan Road, are we gonna reduce the speed limit on Ryan Road?
I think we'll look at that at the time. You know, the speed limits are still set by the MSP, Michigan State Police.
Right.
So we have to be, careful, I think, what we apply for and what we look at, because they set the speed limit at the 85th percentile, which we may or may not like. There is kind of a sweet spot in there with speed. If you set your speed limit artificially too slow, you get vehicles that run up on your cars behind you or pass in the center turn lane, or
They're not
you
gonna
get
be
a
a
lot
center turn
more.
lane anymore, so.
What's that?
It's not gonna be a center turn lane anymore, so.
Right. I just mean in general. But yeah, when we do this implementation project, we can look at that as well.
I know there's been several laws passed in the last couple of years that give cities more ability to set local speed, including rounding down.
Yes.
Now, you now can round down, but more than that, you also can designate streets, because in the past, the state police would come in and say, if a state highway runs through my downtown, it has to be 60 miles an hour. Doesn't make sense for a place where pedestrians are. So you can now apply for, and I think Ryan Road would be a perfect example of this, a place that was formerly very fast, which we are trying to make more for pedestrians.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to be stuck with the speed limits that we have. I think they're excessive, and I think they cause accidents. I think that's why, on many of the streets that have the highest speed limits, we see the most accidents. One leads to the other. Excessive speeding leads to danger. And I know that every mile an hour over 35 miles an hour exponentially increases both the danger to pedestrians and car occupants. Because we test cars at 35 miles an hour for crashes. We don't test them for 60 miles an hour. So, I mean, when a car takes out a pole, like what just happened on, I think it was Van Dyke just recently, they're traveling at excessive speeds and are a danger to themselves and others. And we need to do whatever we can to not just improve the pavement, not just improve the area, but reduce where we can to protect it. We're not reducing it just to write tickets. We're reducing it because we believe that this is a safety improvement that's necessary. Then I was gonna ask about data after implementation, but you seem to have answered that. On Brome, have we done data after implementation for these speed cushions?
We have not taken the post-speed data to date, but we're scheduled to do that shortly.
Because not just speed cushions, but, chicanes could work on Brome. There's different methods that could get you to the same point. And I'm curious if certain ones reduce speed more. I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski that the posts, the delineators, and they should be permanent, delineators on Plumbrook have reduced speed and made that roadway much safer. And I think I've heard from residents who think it's both slowed speeds, whenever I drive it now, and taking them out, that's a concern. Other cities leave them in. I think they should be permanent, and we should further reduce pavement because that slows speeds. And then I guess, for Ryan Road, it makes sense to have, the 2 lanes at the lower part, which has more traffic, and the 1 lane at the most. But I'm kind of, I don't understand the mixed-use pathway. If we are seeding pavement and we have the ability to add protected bike lanes, I don't know why we would mix pedestrians. Maybe in the lower part, we don't have the room, but on the upper part, if we're going to go to a 3-lane street, we should have protected bikeways to essentially move pedestrians out from bikes. Because pedestrians and bikes, when they mix, pedestrians often suffer for it. I mean, we were talking earlier, just anecdotally inside, but not Chief Justice anymore, Justice Richard Bernstein of the Michigan Supreme Court was hit by a biker on a mixed-use path in New York. He broke his pelvis because the biker was riding at an excessive speed. So where we can separate cars, bikes, and people, we should. On Mountain Road, we went to the mixed path because Mountain Road is such a fast street. If the goal is to slow Ryan, and we're going to slow Ryan, we should have clear pathways for all 3. Especially if we're going to change the way the roadway looks through a grant. We can ask for it. We should ask for it. We should do it. We shouldn't just suffer and just put pedestrians and bikes together because we can. Because then that prioritizes drivers over the other people who want to use the roadway. Which, if you remember, was one of my fears when this thing came before us to begin with. That we were going to prioritize cars over people. And I see that on Ryan Road right now. So I would suggest that. And then I also wanted to share Councilwoman Schmidt's concerns on 15 Mile, both east and west of Ryan Road. I mean, when we originally started talking about Ryan Road, it was with that segment in mind, because that's where the injuries are, that's where the accidents are. I think any improvement to Ryan Road should have both east and west of that 15 Mile intersection as part of their priority. Because you can slow Ryan, but if you don't fix that weird curve and all the stuff that goes on there, you're still gonna have the accidents, and you're still gonna have the weird driving that is a very big concern. Some of the improvements we've made have fixed it. I think that the pathway across has helped. I think the no left turn out of a lot of those parking lots has helped. But at the end of the day, that's a priority area in my opinion too.
Yep.
I'm just gonna look here. I think this is great. I look forward to a lot of these improvements. I think that I've driven Pondview. I think that the medians in Pondview both make the street look better and clearly slow the speed. And I would urge when we can on a wider street like that, we should do that all the time. I don't need I've driven it. I don't think I need to have a test. It works. So I look forward to more of these improvements. I've gotten, like my colleagues, have gotten a lot of good feedback from the improvements that have been made. And I hope that we can have a very forward pedestrian-focused design on new roadways and new, I think we are. We're linking pathways, we're protecting pedestrians, but we should also look throughout, because I mean, I think there's a pathway on 16.5 Mile where kids cross to the local school. Maybe because that's only a 2-lane or 3-lane street, it doesn't need a RFB or anything like that. But we should be looking throughout the city for legacy issues that maybe we're not looking at right now, but which can be improved in the future. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Radke. Thank you, council. Thank you to everybody on this task force, Ms. Michaels from HRC, all of our partners here at the city that participated in this and will continue to participate. And it's good to see that this is not just a report that says, here's what we found. This is going to be a long-term action plan. So I appreciate that. To our police department, it is a #1 concern from a lot of our residents, traffic safety. And so it's a benefit of living in a safe city is that that traffic concerns are the #1 concerns that our residents have, but we have to take them seriously and keep them safe, just as every bit as much on the road as anywhere else in the city. So good job to everyone. Thank you. Appreciate the discussion tonight. And nothing else tonight, Mr. Vanderpool?
No, Mayor, that's all.
Okay. All right. With that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is an ordinance introduction, and this is to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Section 23-10 of the City Code of Ordinances to establish new regulations to address nuisance conditions relating to permitted non-compliant mechanical containers located at commercial establishments and residential condominium complexes not receiving curbside collection, with a presentation from our Assistant City Attorney, Don Denault. Mr. Denault.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, administration. Thank you for having me tonight. It's been a little while, and it's always good to be here. I won't say happy Thanksgiving, but happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you and everyone in attendance and watching as well. Just a little factoid that I thought was interesting. It's been about almost exactly to the day, it's been about a year since we enacted amendments to the section that we're now talking about, Section 23-10 of the City Code. A year ago, we implemented some new regulations governing commercial establishments and residential condominium complexes that don't actually get curbside collection, to give them more guidance in terms of their mechanical container, or dumpsters as we know them, collection processes and rules and regulations. So now we're back a year later with some ideas from the Office of City Development, Code Enforcement. The ideas being that when in fact we encounter establishments like that, that are having a little difficulty complying with keeping their property safe from nuisance conditions or blighted conditions or other safety and welfare issues around their dumpsters, and those dumpsters don't actually comply with current regulations because they're grandfathered. They've either been there a long time or they're on an approved site plan that can't really be changed based on the layout. When we do encounter those conditions, this amendment proposes that the Office of City Development would then have the ability to work with those properties to implement some kind of nuisance mitigation plan. And in the draft, we have a couple of ideas for screening walls that would be decorative in nature, perhaps a gate or a fence, perhaps a new concrete pad, some other ideas, any other ideas they can come up with that could work for that site. That kind of nuisance mitigation plan is something we've done with the outdoor patio spaces and the banquet facilities when there are in fact conditions that are happening at the site that need a little bit more, we'll call it a little bit more love. So with that, we have this proposal in front of you this evening for introduction, and I'm certainly here to take any questions that you may have about it and any suggestions as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denault. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
resolved to introduce the ordinance amending Chapter 23, Section 2310 of the City Code of Ordinances to establish new regulations to address nuisance conditions relating to permitted non-compliant mechanical containers located at commercial establishments and residential condominium complexes not receiving curbside collection.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the very succinct description. This ordinance kind of arose after we did some of our recycling ordinances and some of our improvements to the code. And one of the things that we talked about were there are a number of sites that are grandfathered in. A lot of them are very good sites, and they take care of their dumpster enclosures very good, and they have no problems. We didn't want to penalize those sites that are in compliance and doing the right thing, but there were concerned that there are some other sites that are creating massive nuisance conditions, including rodent problems, that because they were grandfathered in, were not having any improvements at all. And I think that this ordinance kind of squares that circle. Sites that have nuisance conditions have to bring their dumpster enclosures and areas up to code to prevent those nuisance conditions, while good actors are not being punished for being good actors. So I'm happy to support this. I think it's a long time coming. I think we can all think in our heads of some of these sites that have these nuisance conditions that have been frequent and long-term. And I think that this gives another tool in our toolbox to solve that problem and improve the city. So I'm happy to support it. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. I'm not sure who got seconded, so I'll open it up. Council, anybody have any other comment? Who do you got, Ms. Riska?
Councilman Yanez.
Yes. Mr. Yanez, anything?
Nope, I concur with Councilman Radke.
Council, anyone else? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up tonight is the consent agenda with the omission of item I. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? with the omission of item I. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I wish to speak on agenda item O or H, excuse me, of the consent agenda. We just had this marvelous comprehensive Transportation Safety Act plan. But I want to further, Mr. Yana has brought up a point about funding, federal funding. And somehow I've been waiting to talk about this. But I have some questions. The acknowledgements and what he brought up was about the equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. I think that's supposed to be accessibility. But what I kind of question a little bit, we have acknowledgements of this 339-page document. And within that, we had city community groups listed as the Ethnic Community Committee, the African American Coalition, and the Teen Advisory Board. Then we come over, this was the lead to Section 5. This was what was located in the package. Promoting equity in all stages of Vision Zero ensures equal access to transportation resources for all. The city of Sterling Heights is a diverse community with residents from many ethnic and cultural backgrounds. The city prioritizes inclusivity, there's that one, and equity, there's that one, by providing translated information, press releases, and other communications in multiple languages to support its diverse population and ensure broad access to important information. And it goes on to do some other things. Today well, it wasn't today, it was over the weekend, picked up this little article about the appeals court temporarily reinstates Trump orders targeting DEI programs. And I'll just read sections of this. A federal appeals court on Friday temporarily allowed the Trump administration to implement some of the president's executive orders that roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, Virginia, overturned the lower court's ruling on February 21st that the executive actions were likely unconstitutional and lifted the injunction issued by U.S. District Judge Adam Abelson in Maryland. A three-judge panel on the appeals court agreed to grant the administration's motion to stay the injunction on two executive orders, noting that the administration is likely to succeed in its appeal. The executive order under challenge included Order 14151, which directs federal agencies to terminate all DEI-related programs as well as equity-related grants and contracts. The other, Order 14173, requires that federal grant recipients certify they do not operate programs that promote DEI initiatives.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, you want to wrap up and summarize real quick?
Okay. We need to, I've never seen this equity. This is EDIA now. So it looks to me like it was something that if they come back and say we can't have a DEI program, we'll call it EDI. So that
Sounds brilliant.
needs to be taken into consideration.
Sounds brilliant.
It was brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
You're welcome, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, anyone else under the consent agenda? Not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next up tonight is a consideration item. This is to consider approval of the fiscal year 2025-2026 Community Development Block Grant one-year action plan. We do have a presentation from our HUD program coordinator, Sydney Aller. Ms. Aller.
Oops. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, and council members. My name is Sydney Aller, and I am pleased to present to you tonight the 25-26 Community Development Block Program Annual Action Plan. So the main goal of CDBG is to foster the development of thriving communities. This is achieved by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities primarily for low to moderate income individuals. When determining if a project is eligible for funding, we use three key national objectives: benefit low to moderate income persons, aid in the prevention and elimination of slums and blight, and meet a need having a particular urgency. The graphic on the screen further breaks down these objectives and highlights the eligibility criteria the Citizens Advisory Committee considers when selecting projects for funding. When allocating funding, it's essential to ensure that each project meets one of the national objectives and adheres to the guidelines set forth by HUD. According to these regulations, the funding is distributed as follows: 20% for administration, 15% for public service programs, which is directed toward nonprofit organizations and interagency partnerships, and 65% for public improvement projects and housing activities. Although HUD has not yet announced our allocation for this year, we are estimating a total of $780,000 based on last year's allocation. Below is the funding breakdown that the CAC is recommending for your approval. $155,000 for administration, $117,000 for public services, $267,000 for public improvements, and $241,000 for housing activities. The CAC is recommending allocating $117,000 to public service programs. Our goal is to ensure that we provide funding to all organizations that submit applications to meet the diverse needs of our residents. And I just wanted to give a little snapshot of the impact CDBG funding had in the last year. Macomb Community Action Agency assisted 59 senior residents by providing snow removal and grass cutting services. Care House provided forensic interviews for 21 children in Sterling Heights. The Library Internet Access Program helped 15 households gain internet and Wi-Fi access. Mats and McCrest provided shelter to 23 individuals with ties to Sterling Heights. And Turning Point offered emergency shelter for 12 residents escaping domestic violence, sexual violence, or human trafficking. Over the last decade, we've strategically used CDBG funding to improve the senior center, replacing outdated items and enhancing the programming and services available to our senior residents. Completed improvements include we renovated restrooms for ADA compliance, installed an outdoor fitness area, upgraded to LED lighting for better visibility, and replaced the roof. Currently, we're working on a kitchen renovation. This is a critical update as the kitchen has long been able to meet the necessary standards. Once completed, the renovation will allow the kitchen to be licensed by the health department, improving food service and creating opportunities for cooking skills training and which is a frequently requested service from our senior community. And those pictures are the restroom renovation that we completed a few years back. The Home and Property Improvement Loan Program provides no interest deferred payment loans for up to $40,000 to our income-eligible homeowners. This program helps single-family homeowners invest and repair their homes, promoting public health and safety, increasing property values, and assisting our senior residents age in place. This is an example of a rehabilitation project we completed in the last year. We replaced hazardous tile flooring to ensure safety for children in the home. We addressed plumbing issues, including replacing a bathroom vanity and fixing toilet problems. We replaced deteriorating kitchen countertops and sinks, and we completed lead abatement, including installing new front doors. A new initiative this year is our mobile home repair program, which was created in response to the growing need for repairs in mobile homes located in Rudgate Manor and Sterling Estates. This program is designed to preserve and maintain decent, safe, and sanitary affordable housing within our city. It offers a $1,000 grant to income-eligible homeowners of mobile homes to make essential repairs. While multiple repairs can be made during a single visit, the total cost cannot exceed $1,000 unless otherwise authorized by the HUD program coordinator for critical health safety-related repairs.
Paul, come on, I mean, take it outside, please. Paul, you can't have a call in here. Paul, you're out of order, and if you don't get out right now, you're not going to speak at this meeting. Thank you. Ms. Aller.
To wrap up, finally, the CAC is recommending $477,000 to fund the following capital improvement projects. $65,500 for the mobile home repair program, $175,500 for the home and property improvement loan program, $62,000 for the senior center alarm system replacement, $15,000 for the senior center door retrofit, and $190,000 for the senior center operable partition wall and track replacement. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Aller. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Nelson.
I question the use of CDBG funds for the purpose of updating the property of the city of Sterling Heights, which is a senior center. Vehemently opposed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else? Paul, can we turn your phone off, please? And I would appreciate.
I'm surprised. Hardly anybody ever calls me. That's quite
Well, yeah, you didn't seem to know where it was either. It was the
Yeah,
ringer was
yeah, it's
on.
very.
Just don't answer it. I mean,
Very surprising. That's all right. Anyway, it's, you
people
know.
make mistakes, but don't answer your phone sitting here in the city council.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know, we can talk an hour and 5 minutes about the city manager's opening remarks. I was a little bit surprised, you know, they spent an hour and 5 minutes on the opening remarks, and then we
Okay, we're on.
rocketed through item 1 and the consent agenda in no time at
We're on
all.
CDBG
But
now. Go ahead.
I won't use the whole 4 minutes, but I just want to make this appearance as a closing remark. Up till now, our federal government takes in and spends $14 trillion, or $12 trillion a year, and they got $2 trillion in deficit spending due to grants like this. And I guess if everything goes well, our new president and House of Representatives and Supreme Court and Senate will make sure that this is the last time we ever have to go through cutting up the pie and grant groveling, because hopefully all these grants will go away and we'll go back to a balanced budget and quit living on federal handouts. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else on this item? Not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to approve the fiscal year 2025-2026 Community Development Block Grant One-Year Action Plan as recommended by the Citizens Advisory Committee and City Administration based on an estimated and annual entitlement of $780,000 and authorize city administration to complete the federal application and secure the funds.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion, Ms. Sarowski?
Yes, Mayor Taylor, I appreciate that. So this money, which has been designated by the federal government and the HUD program, is to assist those that are in most need. I will never have a problem making sure that that happens. And so I'm very much in favor of helping out the citizens that are in the most need. And I'm very much in support of this. That's all I have, Mayor Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Council, anyone else? Mr. Yanes.
Go on, go on.
All right.
They're always elbowing over there.
Yeah, through the chair, I think I ask this every year, but I'm going to ask it again. Through the chair to the city manager, how is the administrative fee determined?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Well, it's stipulated, the cap is stipulated by the CDBG parameters, but I'll happily ask Ms. Sidney to provide the details. Ms. Eller, I mean.
Ms. Eller?
It's 15% of our total grant that we receive is capped for admin
Okay,
by the federal government.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It just seems to me that, okay, we're allowed to keep 15%, so we do. I don't know that we need to. We're not keeping track of anybody's hours or who's administering this. You know, the more money, the less money that we keep for administrative fees, the more money they can go to help people. And I would like to really see us, even though we're allowed to keep that much money, really take a long, hard look at how much we actually need to administer these programs and give the money to people in need. That's number one. And number two, just a statement. I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure why we are not using general funds to fix the senior center and using CBDG money for programs for special needs. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Council, anyone else? Mr. Radke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Ms. Eller. I think you've been here in the past, but this is your first time presenting to us. So congratulations. It's exciting, right?
Yep.
Just very briefly, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski. This is our money coming back to us from the federal government to help those in most need. I was very happy to see this action plan. I guess to answer some of the other questions here, I think we use money on the senior center money is fungible, but requirements aren't. Because seniors are an automatic funding category, which requires very little paperwork and is unlikely to be disapproved by the federal government, I think it makes sense to take the money, use it on the senior center here, and take that money that would be used on the senior center, use something else. So I think that it makes sense to use this money on the senior center. I'm happy to support that. I had some questions earlier about the action program, and you answered them very well. And it seems that we have a goal of trying to give a little bit of money at least to every group that comes before us and asks us for funds, as long as they present and meet the requirements. One thing that I hope in the future we could try to bump up is the Macomb Community Action Program for snow shoveling and grass cutting. One of the frequent things I think we receive from senior citizens is, I had one about a month ago. I'm 93 years old. I live in my home, but I really can't cut my grass or shovel my snow or whatever. And those are the people we're helping with this, helping them stay in their homes, helping them stay in their community. So I really appreciate that part of the program. And then I also am very excited this year about the mobile home repair program, because we want to make sure that these homes are being maintained and that they're safe. And money for that is very important. So for me, I think everything in here it's sad that we don't have more, because I look at the numbers and we have to reduce a lot of the ask because there's only so much money, and there's more need than there is money. And I guess one final thought is that we actually didn't take the cap. We didn't take the full 15%. We actually reduced our cost by $1,000, which isn't a lot. But I think that, and to the chair, Mr. Vanderpool, we have to justify the money we're taking from the CDBG program, don't we? In salaries and hours worked and everything. We can't just allocate 15% to ourselves, can we, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thanks, Mayor. That's correct, Councilman Bradkey. We have to account for that. We do. We analyze it very closely. It's important to mention that the 15% does not cover our costs. So that's a very important point.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. That's what I was going to say. We have 2 staffers who work on this. It's a very large program. We're lucky because when I go to MML, which we're doing tomorrow, a lot of cities would kill to have a direct CDBG block grant. Instead, they have to get it through the county, and we're lucky to manage our own program in a very large city. So the money doesn't cover our costs, doesn't cover benefits, doesn't cover everything else, but we are able to administer it very efficiently, so I appreciate that. So I'm happy to vote in favor of this. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Konski.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we used community development block grant funds to build the senior citizen center And we can only use that for senior projects, not just anything we want to use it for. And that's why we continue to make repairs to the center with community development block grant funds.
Mr. Van. Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Koski, you're correct. A good portion of the cost to build the community center and the expansion back in the early, I think it was 2004, 2005, was funded primarily through CDBG. So, yes, in almost all cases, CDBG funding are used for projects like that, and that's subsidized by the general fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koski. Anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Aller. Appreciate it. All right, next up is a consideration item. This is to consider approval of memorandums of understanding between the City of Sterling Heights and MAPE professional and technical employees, with a presentation from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We have a couple of MOUs before you that pertain to two positions. The good news is the positions there are already budgeted in the budget, so this is really a procedural issue as required by the collective bargaining agreements. So first, let me just briefly summarize them. The first MOU pertains to a reclassification for a member in the bargaining unit from a planner two to a sustainability planner to more reflect the functions of that position. When we look at these positions, we go through a very thorough review, and we look at, we actually have a outside company to make sure this is completely independent, that looks at internal and external equity issues to make sure that the reclassification is competitive in the marketplace. We also talk to the employee's supervisor, and make a determination whether or not the reclassification can be supported. And indeed, in this case, it is. So an MOU has been negotiated with the union and our HR team, and that is one of the MOUs before you this evening. And the second one pertains to a position in our Human Resources Department, and that is codifying once again, through a position description, the position that was budgeted in the budget amendment last December. So again, this is budgeted. It's a formality in that sense, codifying in a new collective bargaining agreement the position that is the lead human resources coordinator position. That was not in the collective bargaining agreement prior to the position being created. And lastly, there's a need to retitle a position in the Community Relations Department that is, well, let me just give you a brief overview. The current, as you know, the current Community Relations Specialist is retiring in the very near future in anticipation of the opening. The Community Relations Director and HR Director reevaluated the core job duties of the Community Relations Specialist and determined that many of the current duties were not reflected in the job description and that a new job title was in order. So that MOU reflects the new position, the new title, I should say, and that is Community Relations and Event Planning Specialist. So that is a simple tweak of the title of the position. Nonetheless, the MOU is required, and I'm happy to respond, as is our HR Director, to any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Council, need a motion?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Resolved to approve the memorandums of understanding between the City of Sterling Heights and MAPE professional and technical employees for the purpose of implementing the reclassification of the Planner 2 to Sustainability Planner, creating the lead Human Resource Coordinator job classification, and retitling the Community Relations Specialist job classification, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the memorandums of understanding on behalf of the city.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
Mayor Taylor, just, these are already budgeted positions, and I'm very satisfied with Mr. Vanderpool's explanation.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
briefly, through the chair to Kate Baldwin, I see her in the audience. I was just very curious about the titling of it as Sustainability Planner. And the reason I ask is, from the backup material, it says it's going to become a Planner 3 position. And I guess how would, because the Planner 3 position that we currently have is the Deputy Planner, or is it a vacant position? Could you
The planner,
clarify the
yeah, so
tree?
sustainability planner is just equivalent in terms of pay as planner 3.
So, right now, we don't have a Planner 3, we have a
Correct.
Deputy
No, we
Planner.
do not
and we
have a Planner
And we
3.
have a Planner 1,
We have a planner 1 and a planner 2.
who's going to be promoted to Sustainability Planner.
Planner 2 is going to be promoted to sustainability planner, correct?
Okay, that's just what my curiosity was. So that, the Planner 2, the direct line would be our planner to our deputy planner to the sustainability
Yes.
planner?
Well, the sustainability planner, in terms of progression, they may, if you're looking at career progression, they may go into the assistant city planner role one day, yes.
This is what the assistant city planner would still have responsibilities over the sustainability planner.
Yes,
Okay, it wasn't in our sheet, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how
Yeah.
it was gonna work.
Yeah.
I have no problem with this, I think that the planning department has really stepped up and is doing tremendously more than they used to, and this is, if our lawyers, everyone says this is well earned, and I'm sure it is well earned.
Yes.
I'm happy to vote for it, that's all I have.
thank you.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next up is a consideration to consider an appointment to the City of Sterling Heights Local Development Finance Authority. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, I would entertain a motion to postpone to the April 1st, 2025 city council meeting. I have a candidate, still haven't been able to touch base with him, so I'd appreciate one more postponement, and we'll get it done on April 1st.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda tonight is item I from the consent agenda, and this is to adopt a resolution of support for the preservation of the federal tax exemption for interest earned on municipal bonds. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, Mr. Radke, would you like the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can make a motion if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Yep. Resolved to adopt a resolution of support for the preservation of the federal tax exemption for interest earned on municipal bonds.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Yes, briefly, I was hoping that Jennifer Varney could come up, or come to the, or the podium, whichever one you prefer, and speak briefly on this issue. This was an issue that was majorly discussed at the National League of Cities Capital Conference, because there's been a program floated nationally to eliminate the tax-free exemption on municipal bonds. And at NLC, they talked about this at length, that this would increase borrowing costs to communities significantly because it would raise interest rates and essentially double the cost of what a bond would be for me. So I was hoping you could talk about how we use municipal bonds and how much the cost might be for our community.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Radke. So yes, so it's basically, it's been floated as a way to help cover some of the potential tax cuts. It's made a list of potential ways to raise revenue, which is why municipalities are concerned. Again, we use bonds to borrow money for building roads, for building community centers, for, we're gonna be issuing a bond, as we talked about last meeting, for the pathway to play and preservation, to build the pickleball court. And, you know, because our bonds are tax exempt, people that buy them, so people that loan us money, right? If you're buying a bond, technically you're loaning us money, and we pay interest on that bond. And because they don't have to pay taxes on that interest, we get a significantly less interest rate than if, you know, Comerica, borrowed money. I mean, it's not to bring up Lakeside, but it's one of the reasons that Lakeside asked us to borrow some money against our tax increment financing, because we can get a much better rate than they can. And the GFOA, the Government Finance Office Association, has estimated that that could make a 2.1% difference. So again, because it's not just, so you're not paying federal tax, you're not paying state tax. If you happen to live, you know, in a city that charges, you might not be paying city tax. So you're going to demand a much higher rate. You're going to want to make more interest because now you have to pay tax. So I did a quick calculation. So again, we're going to be issuing $40 million of bonds. Now, we'll be doing this, thankfully, before there's any risk of this. So this is not going to happen. But just as an example, you know, I was estimating, you know, we'll probably sell those bonds for around 4%. So if our interest rate is now 6.1% over the life of the bond, that'll cost the city about $8 million, $8 million more dollars. And it's the residents that are gonna pay for that, right? So it's kind of like someone is paying taxes, but in the end, we're really paying it because we're paying more interest on our bonds, which means our residents are paying more to build community centers and pickleball courts. You know, they estimated that, I got numbers here, that it's $823 billion more interest for, you know, that would be passed on to residents, which equates to about $6,500 per household over the next decade. So, I mean, it's significant. I mean, again, we're not just borrowing. I mean, it would be significant on your mortgage. You know, it just is much more significant when you're borrowing 10, 20, $30 million.
And it's not just for our improvements, but the OMID issues tax-free municipal bonds. This would increase our water costs too?
Yeah, so yeah, any bonds, so yeah, if MID or OMID issues bonds, they're gonna pay a higher rate, which then would be passed on through water rates. So we would, you know, and almost, I mean, water and, I mean, MID and OMID, I mean, they borrow money every year. I mean, it's really the only way you can finance large water infrastructure projects. So we would get it in higher interest rates, which would, again, could theoretically either increase taxes or just we'd have less money to spend. You know, if I have to spend $8 million more interest on those bonds, for example, that's $8 million less I can spend on trees, sidewalks, pickleball courts. So it's pretty significant.
Thank you, Mrs. Varney. That's why I wanted to bring this forward, just so the residents could know how much this would increase their costs. Because at the end of the day, the city is borrowing for improvements. We're not borrowing to make money. We're not in the business of making money. We're in the business of services. So it's a very scary prospect. So I'm happy to support this. I know that many other cities are doing this. We need to keep municipal bonds tax-free. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll close that portion and move on to communications from citizens. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who'd like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda? Mr. Nelson.
Ken Nelson, Fire Steel Drive. Mr. Taylor, this is your last chance because I know that before the next council meeting, your raise is going to be automatically go into effect along with the rest of the elected officials to really become transparent to what the elected officials' compensation committee is all about. I see the unofficial minutes are online from the last meeting. Appreciate that, but they're not approved. How do you go ahead and take the raise without approved minutes? They won't be approved for 2 more years. That's one item. On the DEI, I am sorry that I am in favor of all residents with race, color, or creed, or accessibility needs. We do not need a DEI program. I think the best thing that ever happened was to have an intern program. I think that is a feather in the hat of the city and you, Mr. Vanderpool. That's how we get qualified people into these positions, not the way we're doing it. It's discriminatory. Thank you. And I'd just like to put out one more question. Are we looking at our DEI program to see if we're going to have to withdraw that? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else under communications? Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hello. I'm not sure if this is the right place to bring this up. I just started looking into this, and you guys had a council meeting, so it seemed like a good time. I was interested in getting some chickens in my backyard, and I looked up, there is not a city code under the animal control for chickens. The only city code that we have listed right now is section 3.01. The raising of livestock, fowl, or animals is not permitted on any property less than 8 acres, which again, I'm not looking to do any type of agricultural work. I really would like to get a couple chickens just as pets. I've had pets before. I see that Warren, Madison Heights, and Troy all allow chickens. And I know that the risk for bird flu is something that was a concern, but it is a low public risk for the health, per the CDC right now. So I just wasn't sure. I saw that it was brought up back in 2021. I'd like to bring it up again. I don't know how to go about maybe getting a permit. It doesn't appear to be any code on record right now in the animal control realm, in the pet realm versus agriculture realm. So again, I'm not sure if this is the right place, so I apologize, but I just don't know where to go.
You're in the right place, so just so you know, we don't kind of engage in back and forth like question and answer during this portion. We're all taking notes, and then when we have the ability to speak later on in the meeting, Mr. Vanderpool can address it, any of the council members can as well. So we don't mean to like blow you off and not respond. That's just not how we conduct the meetings.
Sure.
But if you want to leave your name and your contact information with our clerk, somebody from the city can contact you. I can tell you this has been discussed over and over and over for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of information we can give you, and if you want to sit tight, we'll be able to respond in more detail
Great.
a little later.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you.
Hi, my name's Michelle Vitale. Been a resident for 40 years here. The reason I'm here is concerning the sidewalks. This information all came to me recently. I was notified in 2022 and how they went through and put X's on and our subdivision was chosen at that time to have their sidewalks replaced. And I did it. I did whatever they said, I paid it, and it was like the end of 2022, I believe, the fall that they were installed. Since then, and I know then at the election you put a millage, but it was kind of iffy on this millage about the sidewalk stuff that I didn't understand, but I voted for it. I was in favor of it, and in the meantime now, just in the past few days, it's come to my knowledge that anybody that had theirs replaced this past year in the summer and so on, whoever's still, it's all paid for. It's free. And I don't think that's fair at all. I think that I didn't choose to replace my sidewalks, nor did my sidewalks really need to be replaced then. But I pay my taxes, I followed the rules, I did what was asked of me. And, you know, everybody's on a tight budget. I am. I had to borrow the money to pay it. I took care of it. Never I have no problem. But I feel that, okay, you could say, when I called here and I spoke to engineering, well, the millage says this. Well, I feel, as a Sterling Heights resident, because it says it's for all of Sterling Heights residents, that before a pickleball court goes in, I should be reimbursed what I paid because you told me I had to replace it for my sidewalks. And I can tell you that there is many residents right now that do not know this is going on. I just found out by a fluke that a friend of mine that lives in another part of Sterling Heights, we were talking, it just come out that she didn't have to pay for hers. And I don't understand. I feel I'm fine if you say you got to pay a percentage. We got this millage money. Everybody gets a little piece of the pie. But I don't think it's like, well, sorry, you're out of luck. We had you replace yours in the fall of '22, and this millage came in now in '24. So now from this point on, every other Sterling Heights resident gets theirs paid for completely. And I think it's totally unfair, and I would like this more looked into. And please don't use the excuse that, well, that was the millage, because there's things in that millage that could be done without, and so that I and any other residents in my neighborhood, or anybody that's concerned, that we could be reimbursed for ours as other Sterling Heights residents are. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Mr. Smith?
Well, so many issues, so little time. Back when I lived on Dill Drive, I had the biggest tree on Dill Drive on my 7.5-foot strip of grass. It destroyed my sidewalk. Sidewalk got condemned, brought in a contractor, started digging. The tree had destroyed not only my sidewalk, but my driveway and the inside of my garage. That little 8-foot strip of grass isn't enough to put a tree canopy. Take a look at the big trees. Any tree that's big enough to have shade has already raised the sidewalk and attacked the street. So we put the trees in now. You go borrow all the money, spend it immediately, and then 10 or 15 years later, when the sidewalks get raised, then you got no more money, because basically you behave like a teenager that's got her first credit card, and it says there's a $2,000 credit limit, and geez, I got to get to the mall before closing time because I got a $2,000 credit limit. Well, that's the way you guys are selling bonds. You're selling bonds just because you can. You've got a 15-year cash flow, so let's all spend it the first year and hurry up and spend that, because borrowing is an addictive habit. Borrowing's right up there with alcohol, tobacco, narcotics, pornography, gambling. Once you start do it, you become a habitual borrower, and that's what you are. Because obviously you're incentivized by the money lenders. The money lenders want to make you a slave to interest rates. You borrow money, you get in debt, and you're a debtor all your life. It's like the federal government and just like a lot of other people that can't pay their credit card debt, and that's what you're getting Sterling Heights into. So you're going to borrow money just because you can borrow money, not because you need to. You got a 15-year cash flow, you can patch sidewalks, you can do everything you promised to do over the course of 15 years, and you don't have to do it before tomorrow night. Just because the bank and the credit union, maybe they donated campaign funds or somehow incentivized you to become a borrower, but you don't really need to be. The other one, if you like to gamble, putting $50 or $60 million into out-of-the-box developments, a couple guys maybe in an apartment in Miami that have got a good story, that they're gonna resurrect Lakeside. Well, the people that built Lakeside had a good story, how it was gonna be a permanent deal too, but that didn't work, did it? That didn't work. You guys are so, I don't think you'd bet your own money on Lakeside development. You bet our money on Lakeside development, but you sure wouldn't bet your own. Would you come out of your own money, out of your own pocket, and put money in out of the pocket, or out of the box developments, wherever their name is, on a pie-in-the-sky theory that they're going to demolish Lakeside and turn it into 15,000 units of low-budget housing? Well, good luck. What's a sure thing is the money is going to be spent, the bonds are going to be sold, and we're going to be liable for them. But whether the Lakeside development ever happens, I think if you bought lottery tickets, if you bought lotto tickets, you'd get a 46% payback on your investment. And that's a lot more than you're going to get for our money that you dump down the Lakeside sinkhole that's just the same as the 15-mile sinkhole, money down the drain.
Okay. A lot of misinformation in 3 minutes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? If not, we'll close that portion and go on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of responses to residents. First, with respect to Mr. Nelson, we do not have any DE&I efforts, programs, initiatives that in any way are discriminatory. And as such, the city is able to certify every federal grant application we have, and we are not in any concern whatsoever over that. In addition, the resident who spoke about chickens, you're correct. We don't currently allow chickens on acreage below 8. You do have the option to file a variance, but being, brutally upfront here, that the chances of the variance are very slim. So this does come up periodically, but so far, there is a restriction on livestock and the like in Sterling Heights. And Mrs. Vitale, I certainly understand your concern. It's certainly a valid concern. There's no easy way to transition out of a long-standing special assessment program that has been in place for 50 years. The reason we had to move away from that, or that was a proposal before the voters, is for countless reasons, including the fact that costs are increasing significantly for sidewalks. Special assessment was creating a significant inequity, and there was a better way to do it, to spread the costs. Everyone uses sidewalks, not just the homeowner that has to pay for it, so on and so forth. So I understand that. You certainly have a legitimate concern. At the same time, you and others will not have to ever have your sidewalk repaired or replaced again under this special assessment program, and that does happen. We go through an area, and 5 years later, there may be squares that are significantly above 2 inches that have been caused by tree roots or other phenomena that then we have to come back through a special assessment. Now, I know that doesn't, address your immediate concern, but it should provide some comfort for future in costs that you would have incurred under the old program, if you will. And I, Mr. Smith's comments were full of inaccuracy. There's really nothing in his comments that can be substantiated. The reality is almost all cities have to borrow money, just like almost all residents. Maybe there's some exceptions, maybe Mr. Smith that didn't need a mortgage on his home. Almost everyone has to borrow money, and you do it in a smart, wise, conscientious way to result in the least impact, if you're a homeowner, to your family. And most people are very smart about this. For a city, there are metrics that we monitor very closely. Our taxes are very low. They're in the bottom half statewide for cities. Our debt ratio is very low. Comparatively speaking, especially when you look at cities right around the area, our debt per capita in Sterling Heights is very low, among the lowest. We have low water and sewer rates. We have a superior bond rating. So every individual has a credit rating, and if you're in the 800s, you're doing a phenomenal job. If you're in the 700s, that's very good. Sterling Heights is in the 800s when you talk about our bond rating. Our financial position is very, very solid. We have a superior bond rating, and it's because of all these low metrics I mentioned. So when you hear an individual say that, we're on this tax and spend frenzy, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's just completely woefully inaccurate. And let me just comment, too, that with respect to Lakeside, there's been no bonds issued. The city will not increase taxes for residents in Sterling Heights for any prospective bond that may be related to Lakeside. That will not happen. And in addition, if bonds are sold, they likely will be for all the infrastructure that's required: sidewalks, roads, utilities, water, sewer lines, and so on. These are going to be public roads. It's a massive redevelopment, $1.2 billion. if we ever have to issue a bond, which we intend to do, there'll be countless securities that the city attorney has negotiated for the bond so that the debt service can be paid. It'll be paid from the new value that's derived at Lakeside Mall from the $1.2 billion. In addition, if there's any shortfall, the property owner has agreed to a special assessment that can be imposed not only to them, but future owners for any shortfall that may occur. In addition to that, there's a $1 million line of credit for any potential debt service shortfalls. The list of safeguards goes on and on. So again, the inaccuracies stated needed to be corrected. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Koszybski, anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Not to mention 15,000 units of low-rent housing. Where did you get that from? You don't have to answer, because no, let me be clear. My question was hypothetical. It was rhetorical, I should say. You don't need to answer. You're not allowed to answer. Mr. Smith, do you want to watch the rest of the meeting at home? Because you do this a lot. Do you want to watch the rest of the meeting at home? Okay. Any more outbursts, and I'm going to ask that you be walked out of the meeting. You're out of order. You've been out of order multiple times. It's not 15,000. They're proposing about 3,000 market rate units, not 15,000 low rent units, 3,000 market rent. You're off by a factor of 5 times off there. Okay, council, who would like to make a report, new business, anything? Mrs. Sarowski?
I'll go first. So thank you very much, Mayor Taylor. So I just want to encourage the residents, again, just remind them, it's May 3rd for the Shine event. Weather looks like it's going to start getting better and better. We are hopefully turning the corner with the cold weather coming up just this week, and then looks good for the rest of the time. So I'm hoping that lots of volunteers come out. I plan to be there. I encourage as many people as possible to come and help our residents who cannot help themselves or need a little bit of help. Also, running for reelection, we have to get signatures. That is just part of the deal. While doing that, it's a great opportunity for me to talk to the residents. I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, spending my time out in front of either the library, inside the community center, outside the community center, parks, wherever we can meet the residents. What I've found, and I always ask the residents who are signing my petitions, are, so what do you think about Sterling Heights? They give me their thoughts. I said, what do you want us to do differently? What do you think? This is your opportunity. I'm right here. Talk to me. I have not had, in the 3 weeks I've been doing this, one negative comment about anything. One person said they don't want apartments out of all the times. And I understand that that's a concern of many residents. But every other person has said they love the parks. Thank you so much. I am very happy with the way that our parks are right now. Usually at the library, they mention the library too as being an excellent and very, very comprehensive library. But also, everyone I asked, so what do you think about the new millage? And everyone that I have talked to, now, maybe they come up to me because they might know who I am, and they know that I was on council and was part of the initiative at the time. They love the new millage. Yes, it is more money, and nobody, I know, Mrs. Vitale, I understand. Nobody wants to spend money that they don't have to spend or don't want to spend, but this is for the entire community. It's not for specific groups. It's not for specific parties or political gain. This is for the residents that they voted for and they're excited about. And the overwhelming statement to me was also, not only did they like it, they're very happy with it, but when can we start? When can we get our things? So I said, well, as soon as possible, but you gotta, let the ground thaw first. So that's where we are, and I am just very happy that the residents saw fit to look forward. That's really very, very important. And they were the ones that voted for this. This was not shoved down their throats. This was an offering, just like every other millage is. And I'm very happy to see that this is something that is going to benefit the residents. And on that note, being half Irish, I'm going to wish you Erin Go Bra, happy St. Patty's Day. If you're having anything to drink back at home, sláinte, and have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly. First, today is literally the 190th birthday of Jefferson Township, which is the precursor to Sterling Heights. On March 17th, 1835, the legislature of our state designated this area that we now live in as Jefferson Township. So people have been living here since then. I saw it was kind of a neat thing that we're having our meeting on the exact day that Jefferson Township was created. So happy birthday, 190th birthday for what would become Sterling Heights. Ms. Vitale, I totally understand your concerns. I've been in office 8 years. And from the first day to this last year, I was working to improve and fix the unfair special assessments in the sidewalk program. You know, my father had to pay for special assessments twice since we moved into Sterling Heights. We've been here for 28 years. And it's just as unfair the second time as it was the first time. The millage is forward-looking, and I'm sorry to say that. It's forward-looking because you had to cut it off some point. I wish I could have gotten on the ballot 2 years before that, or even 2 years before that. Because in the future, no one in the city is ever going to have to pay for sidewalk repairs again. But it's cold comfort to you and to my father, who paid twice, and to many of the other residents. I understand that. The reason that we created this millage, or one of the reasons, was because the assessments were skyrocketing. The neighbor across the street from my father had to pay $5,000 for his sidewalk, which was just totally unreasonable. And I'm glad that those costs won't be incurred by future residents. I know that's not what you want to hear, and I'm very sorry. But that's the truth, and I'm very proud to support the millage. I know that this will be a long-term fix that will prevent the unhappiness that you're experiencing right now in the future. I'm heading out to Michigan Municipal League meetings in the morning. I'm happy to go. One thing that I thought was interesting when I was in the NLC in Washington, D.C. this past week was I met with the Farmington Hills City Council, and one thing they said is they watch our meetings to see how to conduct better meetings. We're the standard for how meetings are conducted in the state. I thought that was a very interesting comment, that they said that we get our business done in a highly detailed manner, but also everyone gets to speak, and we have very few problems. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact. There was 19 representatives from Michigan, from Fenton, Farmington Hills, from Sault Ste. Marie, Lapeer, and across the state. We went to Capitol Hill to talk about all the things that we're talking about now. But the three most important things to me were the municipal bonding issue. While we were at the NLC, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke to the delegates and said that the Trump administration's plan is to federalize local law enforcement to enforce immigration laws. They're going to pass a law that this is going to be required, and there'll be no payments for this wonderful service that they allege. I believe it's unconstitutional, but this is where we are as a people. I thought the takeaway from his speech was fascinating. He said that illegal immigrants were responsible for the housing crisis, all 20 million of them somehow. And he also implied that immigrants, not illegal immigrants, were destroying the American dream. So that's almost a direct quote. And my grandfather, as an immigrant to this country, is probably rolling in his grave right now, because immigrants are the backbone of our community here in Sterling Heights, as well as our nation. And it was very depressing to hear those comments. And I guess the final point is I met with the chief of staff to Congressman John James, because the congressman wouldn't meet with me. And he guaranteed us that we were going to get our money for Clinton River Road, and that we were going to get our federal grants for trees. But in the future, the administration wants to eliminate the community block grant program. They want to eliminate many grants, including, and National League of Cities had a whole list of them on a big board, the COPS program, which helps fund local police officers and communities policing, firefighter grants to firefighters. There's a number of things that are on the chopping block. So I urge the residents at home, if you care about these programs, which are essential to your safety, call your congressman, call your representatives in the Congress, and tell them that these things are what keep us safe in Sterling Heights. They're things that make our community great, and to lose them would be more than unfortunate. It would, I think, destroy our budget. On that, a happy St. Patrick's Day. I am Polish, so I will eat the food and drink the beer and be very Polish on this day. But it's a tremendous day, and I hope everyone is having fun and being safe. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? Mr. Yanez.
Yep, I got a list here. So in our confidentials, we had our expenditure. I noted that there was an expenditure for Velocity Center of $95,151.72 that was paid to O'Reilly Rancilio, and I'm just wondering if somebody can tell me what that money was for, through the chair.
See, how much?
$95,151.72. Is that a typo?
It must be, because I did not receive $95,000.
Okay, well, that's why I'm flagging it, because I've never seen an expenditure that large.
Me neither.
So,
I'll find out and report back.
okay,
What
thank
that may be.
you, I appreciate that. God, no, I only had 3 notes and a lot came up here. I would really like to see the cost of administration for the CDBG grants, that the $155,000 not even covering those costs. I can only imagine that the 2 young ladies that are working on there probably together don't make 150, maybe with benefits they make 155. And if we're not meeting the cost, I'd like to know how much our cost exceeds the 155,000. If city administration can provide me with that information, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, great speech about the bonds and Lakeside Mall. Fact of the matter is, you know, Out of the Box Ventures stood right there and said, we won't make enough profit if you don't loan us the money. We've become a bank. That's not the reason why we should be borrowing money. We should be borrowing money to help people like Mrs. Vitale that need the help. And there's more and more people that need the help in the city as we get to become an older municipality. And yes, I know money's fungible and the whole thing with this, the senior center, but the fact of the matter is, we use that CDBG money, and a lot of people, I get a lot of calls, a lot of emails in regards to snow removal, especially snow removal, not as much as lawn care. And the money's already gone, and, you know, you have to tell people, well, you got to hire a contractor, even though it's senior citizens. So I would really like to see how we're using this money. If we're going to borrow money to help somebody make a profit, maybe we can borrow money to help people in need. And you know what, I'm glad people like the millage, but I have to remind everybody that 30% of the registered voters, 30% of the registered voters voted yes on that millage. 70% either voted no or didn't vote at all. On the 30% raised taxes on 100%, just FYI. I too am excited about the Shine event. I go to the Shine event not just every year, but twice a year. I do the fall and the spring. I've been doing since I've been on city council. I look forward to having more of my council members join me out there. It's always a great event. We always get to help out a lot of folks. And then last but not least, we did have a notice from the elected officials Compensation Commission for pay raises. I would like to offer up a resolution to reject those pay raises, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Hearing no second, do you have anything else, Mr. Yanez?
Nope, that'll do it.
Okay, council, anyone else?
Oh, Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
Okay, just a reminder, it's not too late to start thinking about the cleanup days in April, because we'll have Shred Day on April the 12th at DPW. Hazardous Waste is on April the 19th, and Electronics Disposal Day is on the 26th of April. So, and I would really like to see another Shred Day in the fall. So, nothing further.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Council, anyone else? Couple things I just want to respond to. Yeah, Mr. Yanez brought it up. It was a 3% raise for, the Compensation Commission meets every 2 years. They set the salary for the mayor and council starting July 1st, 2025 through, I guess, June 30th, 2027, and then they'll be back in February of 2027. They provide a 3% raise. In terms of the backyard chickens, we've talked about this over and over and over a lot. I don't think the votes are on council to pass it. So we're aware that you need about 8 acres. I think you need 8 acres. I'm not sure that there's many people in Sterling Heights that have 8 acres in a residential area. So it's essentially banned. Chickens are prohibited in Sterling Heights. It would take an action of the city council to change that. It was brought up in 2021. We may have received a report or some information from administration, but ultimately the council decided against allowing that. So that's where it stands right now. Ms. Vitale, I would just sort of echo what Mr. Radke said. For lack of a better term, it sucks. I know that. I get it. There's nothing more that I can really say, is that when we went from one policy to another policy, there had to be a cutoff at some point. And if we went back and said, well, we're going to go 2 years back, and anybody who's had their sidewalks done in the last 2 years, I'd have people 3 years ago saying, why did you cut it off then? If we went back 100 years, I mean, there's nowhere we could have gone that would have satisfied everybody. But to Mr. Radke's point that he made repeatedly, because I brought this up, there will be an inequity when this happens. And his point was, so we should avoid doing the right thing because it's going to hurt some people that have already been forced to do the wrong thing in the past. I get it. It's too bad. But unfortunately, that is the way it is. A couple things on Lakeside Mall in response to Mr. Smith, just so that people understand. We're not betting the city's money on Lakeside Mall. We're not. There will be no general fund money put into investing in the infrastructure there. The way that this is going to work, there's a lot of talk about bonding and debt and racking up credit card debt. Yeah, and I get that entirely. If you're racking up credit card debt to buy consumer goods that you can't really afford, and you're just making the minimum payment on your credit card at the end of the month, you're in a spiral and you'll never get out of it. However, let's say you're a landlord and you own a house, and you can get a mortgage for that house, and the mortgage is $800 a month. And then you rent it out to a tenant who's paying you $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month. You've got a good income stream, okay? Residential tenants, they maybe aren't so great. Let's say I've got a commercial building and I've got a medical office that's in there, or a CVS or a Walgreens, or a great tenant that's going to sign a 40, 50-year lease and is going to pay rent pretty much guaranteed and has a track record of paying that. That's what we're talking about here. That the city is going to bond eventually to do the infrastructure improvement work at Lakeside Mall. And that bond money, that bond payment that the city is going to be obligated to pay is essentially guaranteed by the developer. It's going to run with the land. The developer, as the property value increases from development there, the increased tax revenue from the development is going to pay that. Not the general fund, not the taxpayers that live up and down every street here in the city of Sterling Heights. That money is going to be paid back by the development. And if they say, you know what, we're not going to pay it, we're just going to slap it on their property taxes, as Mr. Vanderpool said. And then we always eventually get paid whenever somebody goes into tax foreclosure. After about, 6 months or so, it goes to the county, and the city gets made whole 100% of the time on every single tax foreclosure. So I feel very comfortable that the city of Sterling Heights, we're not wagering on this, and that to the extent that there is a default, which I don't anticipate there would be, the taxpayers will be made whole and they're very well protected. So again, I would say there will not be 15,000 units proposed there. The developer is currently talking about something between 2,500 and 3,000, I think closer to 3,000 units. So I'm of course in support of that and looking forward to that. I think it'll be great. Interesting that this is the 190th anniversary of Jefferson Township. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm also very comfortable with the CDGB money that was spent. And Mr. Yanez wants to say, well, only 30% of the registered voters voted on this tax increase. Well, only about 10% of the registered voters voted for any one of us, but I haven't seen that stop any member from expressing their opinion or voting on matters that are important to the public and using the voice that they have up here in order to enact policy and to try to influence people to a certain way of voting and thinking. So that's how elections work. The millage passed, got more than 50% of the vote. And I support it. I supported it then. I'll continue to support it. I think it's great for our city. At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported, with no discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.